There are going to be elections in Germany on the 23rd of February, and everyone now is really anxious to see what is going to happen, and there are debates as to whether the AfD should be banned. They are ongoing, and now they have been reignited. Now, let me give you short context about what happened these days. 2 days ago, the CDU passed a proposal that was voted by 348 members of the German parliament, and it won, and it passed with the help of AfD members. So that was the first, let's say, teaming up of a mainstream party and the AfD, which broke the taboo.
Which party was it? The Christian Democrats?
Yes, yes.
Are they the biggest party as well? Is that right?
They are, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Right now.
Merkel's party, right?
Yeah. Right, so that broke the taboo that no mainstream party was going to ever collaborate with the AfD, that they call the firewall. Right, so a lot of people, Angela Merkel is one of them, went out and said this is shameful, no one should collaborate with the AfD. And lots of people went out, lots of leftists went out to protest. Here we have people outside the CDU offices that were evacuated. And Naomi Saib is asking, who is funding them, and basically says that NGOs paid by taxpayer money.
That's what happens in a lot of other countries, isn't it? So it wouldn't surprise me.
Exactly, and you had essentially a far leftist mob that went out the CDU headquarters and actually led to them being evacuated because they protested. Some far leftists.
Mm-hmm. If that were the other way around, say the AfD went to another party's headquarters and protested,
Yes.
They'd be like, "That's an act of domestic terrorism."
Yes, and this is exactly what happens with the constant bombardment of public discussion with the notion of the far right and the smearing, because any person who has an actually right-wing or center-right-wing perspective gets constantly bombarded with accusations of being far right, and actually they can't talk. It's much more difficult for the public to listen to what they have to say because they constantly have to answer to smears, but no one is pointing attention to the far left and how undemocratic they are and how much of a constitutional risk they represent. Right, so the vote will be held in Parliament today on whether to start a process to try to ban the AfD party. 113 MPs are saying that the AfD is unconstitutional. It should be declared unconstitutional by the federal court. And if banned, the party will lose all the seats and all assemblies and assets would be confiscated. Now, we will go back towards the end to Article 21 of the German constitution that says essentially that if a party is consistently showing signs that it is going to be unconstitutional and disrespectful of the democratic order of Germany, it can be banned. Parties have been banned before, even after World War II. We had two bans, I think, in the 50s, a communist group and another group that was supposed to be a continuation of the Austrian Painters Party. Right.
So could I say something so quickly? So those MPs, I think, are well aware. I don't think you can exist in Germany without knowing both previous German administration's policies and the AfD's policies, and I'm pretty sure that they know full well that they're very different, and painting them as the same is silly, because I think the AfD is quite a liberal party in its, it's quite constitutionalist. It wants separation of powers. It wants to limit the state and things like that. It's liberal in a more classical sense, isn't it? And I think that that's fair to say. And I think that what they're doing, they're well aware that there is this very clear distinction, and yet they're pushing ahead with it anyway. And I think it's cynical politics more than an actual legitimate concern.
We will get there and talk about their manifesto, which is, as you said, very, I would say, classically liberal. Mm-hmm. It's classical liberalism, basically. It's not something weird, and it's especially in economics. It's for deregulation, against bureaucracy, and
everyone knows that those are the Austrian Painters policies. He loved liberalism for some reason.
Yes, right. So I will mention why the people who want to ban it, and the reasons they cite, but also the arguments to the opposite side. Now, remember the number 113? 3 months ago, this is again 113 members of parliament signed a document that says that that the AfD should be banned. So it's nothing new exactly. It didn't happen yesterday or 2 days ago for the first time. There are lots of MPs who think that the AfD should be banned, and it looks like there are 113 here. And
it's a bit of a failure of a political system that you can vote to ban your political opposition. I think that you shouldn't have that in a political system at all.
Well, it's very democratic, let's say. Yeah. It's very democratic.
The people vote for a party, you decide that they're too naughty, and they ban them.
There's been a movement in Germany since day one that's gunning for AfD's prescription and destruction.
Yes.
It's certainly not new.
Yes. So I want to present the whole discussion and arguments for and against the ban, and also use my arguments towards the end. But I really want to show people the concerns and also the replies. Right. So what happens is that I won't say that there are two sides on the debate. Some people say it's the legal and the political. I think that's a completely wrong way to carve up the discussion. I would say it's the intelligence agency side of things and the political side of things. And I will say I don't have any, let's say, access to intelligence agency. I simply don't know, and I don't have any. I don't have what?
You're doing yourself a disservice there, Stelios. You don't have any intelligence. I think you're a bit better off than that.
You know what I mean, Josh. Right. So there have been several arguments as to why the AfD should be banned. The people who say that it should be banned are routinely saying that, first of all, some of its members, like Bjorn Höcke, have been fined for using slogans that make connotations of mid-century movement.
Wasn't it like something like for Germany?
All for Germany.
Yeah.
All for that was mainly it. All for Germany, and also they say that he uses hawkish language. He's the leader of the AfD in Thuringia, and Thuringia is the state where the AfD came first in the federal state elections. No, so that's number one. Number two is that they say that there was an event in the Thuringia parliament where in the first session the leader of the parliament, who was a member of the AfD, was accused of not following the procedure and the law. And everyone made a fuss as to how this is actually unconstitutional. And also there is a court ruling in Münster on May 13, 2024, which is a higher administrative court in Germany that ruled that the AfD party could be classified as a suspected extremist organization, and the court upheld a 2022 lower court ruling allowing Germany's domestic intelligence agency, the BfV, to continue surveilling the AfD. The judges found sufficient evidence that the AfD pursues goals that undermine human dignity and democracy, particularly targeting German citizens with a migration background. Right, and they constantly say this, and one of the reasons that they say this is the appeal to remigration in the AfD manifesto, because they're saying that wanting to remigrate people, especially of a migrant background, is against their dignity and against humanity, and it's considered to be extremist.
I would turn it the other way around, that imposing third world migration upon a civilized country is one of the most inhumane things ever to be done in human history, and that the people basically surveilling and trying to present a classical liberal party as extremist are traitors to their own country.
I was going to say, just all that. It's just, no, anyone that advocates for that, trying to ban the AfD on the grounds that they're sort of inhuman in some sense for wanting their own country, for being a nativist, for having nativist sentiments, that they're simply fifth columnist enemies of the state, enemies of the people. Simple as that.
I mean, I see this constantly. This is a theme we see. A lot of the people who are pro-globalist, they're actually standing for foreign nationalisms.
Yeah.
Well,
especially non-European ones.
By standing against domestic nationalism, you're favouring foreign nationalism, aren't you? Essentially.
Yes. And let us say that by again, because we're talking about Germany when we're talking about nationalism, we don't mean nationalism of that kind of the mid-century. It's basically patriotism, wanting your country to have its own distinct national identity. I think that's fair to say.
Wanting
that's not a controversial
your way of life and the continuation of your people.
Yeah, right. So, interestingly speaking, the people who are saying this are using the justification that the AfD constitutes a threat to democracy. Now, let me just say this. How many people have you seen protesting? How many globalists or pro-EU people have you seen protesting against Thierry Breton, who is the former European Commissioner who said that the EU has mechanisms to nullify potential election victory of the AfD? He said, we did it in Romania and we will obviously do it in Germany if necessary.
Those are the words of a tyrant. If you willingly overthrow election results you don't like, then you can't be claiming that you're doing it to protect democracy, can you?
Yes. And from an outsider's perspective, because I'm not German and I don't live in Germany, when I see two people and I see one person gloating and being very happy about how undemocratic he is and how tyrannical he is, and people who are actually his friends are saying that they want to ban another party that expresses more than 1 out of 5 Germans for the sake of protecting democracy, my red alert goes off.
Yeah, it's sort of like, Chancellor Palpatine, before he became the Emperor, saying that the attack on my life has left me scarred. We need emergency powers to crush our enemies. Sorry to lower the tone, but still, it's that level of evil. It's like, I have institutional backing and power, and I'm going to use it to crush my enemies under the auspices of protecting the citizenry.
Yeah. And this actually shows that there is an actual deficit of democracy in the EU, and a lot of the parties that are essentially following the EU line, it's not a democracy, it's a managed oligarchy that tries to silence opposition to its main agenda. The agenda is multiculturalism that disintegrates social cohesion, and there is just a kind of oscillation between whether you want it faster or not. But that's the main agenda. And the supposed merit of democracy is that you can actually get a lot of people to change course, not just people to debate whether they want to move fast or slowly towards destruction.
I think it all comes back to what Aristotle said about tyrants preferring foreign people as subjects because it allows them greater freedom to be tyrants, right? And I think that the same thing is going on here with the AfD and within the EU, that it's in the self-interest of people within these organisations, by the sort of perverse way in which they've been set up. It incentivises them flooding these countries with migrants because it then enables greater power and influence to the bureaucrats who are running things.
Right, so not everyone agrees. Some politicians say that it shouldn't be banned, and they don't necessarily agree with the AfD, but they think that it shouldn't be banned, that the move has more risks and costs than benefits. And here we have Chancellor Olaf Scholz by the SPD, who is now the Chancellor of Germany, saying that basically that there is no sufficient evidence for the AfD to be banned.
Well, credit to them.
Yes, that there is no sufficient evidence. So you would expect that if there was sufficient evidence, that they would have already banned it.
I mean, if they dug around, in one of the senior AfD leaders' files and they find plans to carry out a Reichstag fire, then maybe they would have a bit of a cause for concern. But I don't think they're going to find any of that because, as far as I'm aware, the AfD have been operating in the confines of German democracy in much the same way as any other party. They've not been breaking those rules, so there's no reason to presume that they're undemocratic at all.
Well, I did an interview on Lotus Eaters with Peter Boehringer. Yeah. When was it? Like a year ago or something in that ballpark. I think he's one of many vice chairman. I think that was his. Anyway, relatively senior, I think reasonably senior person in AfD. And he was very, very, very reasonable. And I don't mean this as a criticism, but it was kind of milquetoast. Like, I was too based for him. I was saying stuff where he was like, like a bit wide-eyed, like, I was asking him things about the nature of US bases, NATO bases in Germany, the nature of the... Well, there was one question I asked him about the pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline, and he just ummed and ahed and didn't really answer. And I don't mean to throw him under the bus here, but then afterwards said, can you not put that out? We just, as AfD people, we have to be whiter than white. We can't have anything to do with people accusing us of being conspiracy theorists. We can't have anything, even the hint that we're being too right-wing. Everything has to be super constitutional, super within the lines. They're
Very
white.
German thing to
they're
say,
whiter than white. They have to be. They absolutely have to be, because if they cross the line anywhere in a tiny amount, they'll get jumped on and they'll be called unconstitutional and they'll get banned. So it's their business. They're in the business of staying within...
playing the long game.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so... it's mad, because if they do ban them, it will only be a stay of execution, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, for the right-wing or right-leaning movement in Germany. Germany, like most countries in Europe now, most of the Western countries, are a pressure cooker. In Britain, we saw it with the Southport riots, for example. In Sweden, what's going on in Sweden, in France, all over the place. Germany is, of course, one of those. It's a pressure cooker. And if they don't, the establishment, the lefties, whatever it is, the fifth columnists, don't allow some of that pressure out by allowing AfD to exist, then that pressure cooker is going to keep rumbling away. Yeah. It's going to keep rumbling away. It's really short-sighted of the lefties in Germany to try and outright prescribe AfD. It's crazy. Yeah. Because the people that support them are not going anywhere. If you ban AfD, they're not going to disappear. They'll become more bitter, if anything.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? That if you push people underground, you only make them more embittered towards you, and you prove their point.
Yeah. And actually, it proves also our point that politics in Europe right now is mostly the micromanaging of decline. Because even that, if they try to ban the AfD without trying to understand the reasons that people support it and try to address their concerns, they're actually dealing with a symptom and not its cause. And right now, I don't see how you can just ban a party that expresses more than 1 out of 5 people. And this is a conservative estimation by the Politpro that shows that the AfD right now gets 20.8% of the votes. I've seen some others that say 23.
So 1 in 5, 1 in 4 people.
More than 1 in 5.
Well, look,
more than 1 in 5.
Their whole political voice is just shut down.
It's the second largest party.
That would be crazy.
Look at the US and what they tried to do to get Trump off of the ballot and try and imprison him and interfere with his presidential campain.
Blow his head off on camera.
Yeah, exactly. And he represented, what, 50%? You know, those who voted, the majority. Yeah. Right? And so it seems like the globalist faction is willing to go a lot further, even if, you know, the AfD held a majority. Yeah. In the unlikely event that happens, they're still going to go after them.
But also this raises the question of whether it is actually the opposite, and it's the people who call for the AfD to be banned who are the constitutional risk here, the risk to democracy. Because
right. The exact opposite.
Yeah, because by literally pushing forward their policies, and these policies have actually made Germany a lot worse, poorer. They have contributed to diminished economic prospects, to a surge in crime. If they ban the party that speaks about them and actually tries to say, we live in 2025, we need to take the world at face value and move within the world as we find it, not as we'd like to think that it is.
So with my analogy of a pressure cooker, there is a little bit of pressure being released.
Yes.
And they would just turn even that off.
Because they would communicate, they would signal that they don't want to address the concerns of the people who go to vote for the AfD, and there are more than 1 out of 5. So it's like taking 1 out of 5 people and saying, well, I'm not going to listen to you, and I don't care about you. You don't have a voice.
You mentioned managed decline earlier. I was like, you're lucky if you're getting managed decline.
Yeah.
It's more like just allowing like a narco-tyranny or something, yeah, you're lucky if you get managed decline.
Yeah. Right. So we see here that Alice Weidel is the most popular candidate for chancellor, according to some polls. They have been first in the state elections of Thuringia, second in Saxony, and also in Brandenburg, and they seem to be the second largest party.
Yeah, they've been doing very well, haven't they, electorally? And of course, Brandenburg's quite significant as well, considering where it is and its significance in the country.
Exactly. So I'll show you Article 21. It says here about political parties, Clause 2, parties that by reason of their aims or the behavior of their adherents seek to undermine or abolish the free democratic basic order or to endanger the existence of the Federal Republic of Germany shall be unconstitutional. Right. So I'm not gonna lie. I don't like some of the things that have been said and some of the slogans. I find them ridiculous. I'll be very frank. You don't need to do this, and especially if you are in a group, you don't need to make it more difficult for you for the members of your group. But what I see here is that I see a whole establishment that signals, I don't care about the will of the people. I don't care about democracy. I don't recognize your right to have a voice if your voice is contrary to the small choice I'm giving you, which is managed decline or really fast managed decline.
I think what we're seeing quite nakedly is how a lot of politics functions in the modern day, that it's party politics above all. It's my group against yours, whatever the cost.
This will lead to, if they ban it, it will lead to widespread delegitimization of institutions. It would lead to widespread delegitimization of democracy and also of the federal court.
I would put sanctions on Germany if I were the Prime Minister of Britain. I think it would be legitimate to say, hang on a minute, you've just got rid of the second most popular party in your country. How can you be a democratic country anymore? You can't.
It's just incredibly authoritarian. It shows that they have zero arguments left, and what they want to do is to basically talk about. They want to prevent people from talking about the consequences of the policies of the globalist parties. It's not going to work.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.